How much they rush for?
300.
It's not physical enough. Yeah.
That was Fran Brown after today's 37-31 loss to Boston College. It was an eerily similar message that he had in previous games. Ohio, the opener. Stanford, third game. The defense, not physical enough. When will things change? I don't know. My analysts, Sam Corcoran and John Boccio, they might know. We're here to break it down. It's Orange Press Pass that starts right now. Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Orange Press Pass. Austin Barach, Sam Corcoran, John Boccio here, fellas. The Orange losers today in Chestnut Hill. SU drops to BC 37-31, falls to 6-3 on the year and 3-3 in the ACC. The ACC title game is pretty much a shot now, as we know. Sam, some to like, but a lot not to like in this game. What are your first thoughts?
I think my first thought, 3 words for Syracuse: wake up, Syracuse. This team always seems to fall asleep in November, John, and they prove it yet again that this team is just not awake right now. And Kyle McCord said the other day against Pitt, or the other week I should say, that this team has a history of not performing well in November. It seems like nobody listened. They're asleep at the wheel. They slept through their alarm once again today. Something needs to change in the month of November.
Absolutely, Sam. This game was a monstrosity from Syracuse because ultimately this is a very winnable game, except for my first thought. Run defense, never heard of her, because ultimately there was no chance for Syracuse to win this game with how BC ran the ball. You had 2 backup running backs that just mauled Syracuse the entire time.
I mean, never heard of her. That's too bad for Syracuse, because we're going to show you these highlights right here, and the theme has been set. The run defense was really bad. So, folks, pay attention to the defense, and especially against the run, because BC's running backs had a field day here in Chestnut Hill. BC coming off of a bye week, losers of 3 straight, desperate for a win. No score, obviously, early on. Quint Allen gets going, and he fumbles it. And this, again, has been an issue, not specifically for Allen, but an issue throughout the day for Syracuse. Later on, Kai Robichaux trucking it to the house, the pylon, he's in. Some foreshadowing for stuff to come later on. BC's up 7-0. Jordan McDaniel, a little bit later. Again, if it wasn't Robichaux, it was McDaniel. Back-to-back. Castellanos, plenty of time, hits his man. Lewis Bond for the touchdown. Sam, 14-0. Can the Cuse come back?
Well, Kyle McCord finding Aronde Gadsden right there. I'm a little surprised they didn't use him more throughout the game. I think you got to keep targeting Gadsden. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But there, the touchdown with an amazing catch.
Just a beautiful strike and an even better catch with the body control. 14-7. The Orange are coming back. And then it's Jackson Meeks. How many times have we seen this season him making those big-time receptions along that far sideline? And then Allen rushes in to tie up the ball game. It's a brand new game. And then Jaden Bellamy off the tip. John, all the momentum in the world with the Orange right here.
Syracuse went into the half in a huge way.
Later on, again, trying to capitalize off of that turnover. 1st and goal. Allen, similar to his first touchdown, now goes off the left tackle, walks in the end zone. SU's up 21-14. 8:36 left, but this is where the game just flips. A 3-play drive for Boston College starts with this play here. Robichaux all the way down inside Orange territory. And Sam, Elijah Clark, what are you doing right there?
You can't do that. That's a careless error. We've seen that a lot in Syracuse teams in the past. And BC capitalizes and gets a touchdown. Robichaux right there.
21-21. McCord, can he respond? No, he can't. In fact, the ball comes loose. BC just pick it up. They punt it. Oh, no. It's a safety, but John, BC would actually capitalize here off of the free punt. They go in, they storm down the Orange defense, like you just said, alluded to earlier. They weren't there.
This Syracuse defense couldn't do anything, and it all started with that safety because that was the total momentum shift. Syracuse had it all heading into that, and then after the safety, it all went off the rails.
Daryl Gill scored a touchdown previously, but BC, again, whenever they needed to move the ball, they did so. They had a backup quarterback in Grayson James. Castellanos went out early in the second half. It did not matter. BC only had 65 total passing yards Last chance for Syracuse, incompletion from McCord. You thought that was the last chance. They somehow got the ball back. Their defense did its job. And then, nice screen pass here to Allen to get us to the 2-minute timeout. Fran Brown might have mismanaged some time. Jackie Kennedy makes it a one-score ball game. Interesting here on the ensuing onside kick. Syracuse recovers, but of course, Syracuse does not fully recover because Fidel Diggs, I see, with an illegal block. And Sam, the game would be closed out here with BC recovering the onside kick.
Penalties, penalties, penalties. You mentioned Elijah Clark, and there it is with Fidel Diggs to seal the deal for Syracuse for their third loss of the season, Austin.
BC 37, Syracuse 31. BC now 1 win away from becoming bowl eligible. They were playing with a lot on the line. Syracuse off of last week's triumph against Virginia Tech, back on the road, back in the loss column. You see McCord nearly get to 400 yards again here, John, but it was not enough.
A career high in passing yards for Kyle McCord. Still couldn't get Syracuse a win. And that's something that we have not seen in quite some time, because normally when McCord has these breakout games, that's when Syracuse is playing its best football. Yeah. And that's why a lot of this does go on that run defense, because if it weren't for 2 backup running backs combining for over 300 yards, this is 100% a win, and Syracuse goes down to 7-2.
All right, we now welcome on our reporter, Peter Elliott, who is live in Chestnut Hill. Peter, there's a lot of emotions with this game. Syracuse off of, like I just said, the big win against Virginia Tech. But how this game played out was really disheartening. How would you assess the spirit of this Orange team right now?
Yeah, Austin, I'm happy to talk to you, but the players weren't exactly thrilled to talk to us after the game. It's nothing we, the media, did, but I think this was a game that, frankly, they expected and thought they should win. And you look at it on paper, they should have. Kyle McCord had a season-high 392 passing yards. On the other end, Boston College only threw for 65 passing yards. Yes, BC was a 2-point favorite heading into this game, but they just lost 3 straight games. Syracuse, a great 18-point comeback like you already talked about last week against Virginia Tech. They were rolling high, and they just fell flat in this game. Austin, this was the most points Virginia Tech has scored in a game since October of last year. Just in a remarkable offensive performance for a team that really has, at points, struggled to score the ball. And you saw it on the faces of the players after the game. We talked with Justin Barron, Marlo Wax, head coach Fran Brown. They weren't thrilled with this game, especially after things have been trending following last week. A lot of things to clean up before next week's road game at Cal. They'll really work on it in practice, but they weren't happy after this game, Austin.
Peter, my friend, hope you're enjoying Chestnut Hill. After the game, Fran Brown said that his team isn't tough. You heard it at the beginning of the show. He said that before this season. What from today really resonated with that statement from what you could see?
Yeah, I think it really starts with the play in the trenches. I mean, this was an experienced veteran BC offensive line going up against a inexperienced kind of backup to Syracuse defensive line. You saw it in the trench play. BC was able to explode off the line. And also, I think you especially saw it in the tackling. This was a worry for Syracuse going into this game. Syracuse in the bottom third among FBS teams in stop rate. Fran Brown talked about that in his press conference heading into this game. He knew tackling would be an issue. They didn't do enough of it early enough in this game, allowing so many big runs. I think that's where the toughness really comes in. They weren't getting stops in this game. Of course, Fran Brown talks so much about the T and Dart toughness, being Northeast tough. I think Boston College was the Northeast team that was so much tougher in this game. Syracuse got outplayed in this one, allowing 37 points to Boston College, Sam.
Peter, all this talk about the trenches, right? Northeast tough, everything with this run defense, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Syracuse couldn't defend the run today. So what exactly was it in the trenches outside of this offensive line experience? What happened in the trenches that Syracuse couldn't perform today?
It's a great question, John, and I think we have to go a little deeper. It's something we didn't even see on the field. I think it comes down to some of the injuries. They've lost a lot of guys on this defensive line over the course of the season. They're down 3 starters from where they began this season, so they're kind of on a secondary, kind of second string right now with those guys, and they kind of struggled again against a more experienced Boston College offensive line, allowing 313 rushing yards, the most all season, to, of course, Boccio, but also a guy in Jordan McDonald who wasn't even one of the 4 running backs listed on the depth chart, he was wearing a different jersey number than what was listed in the program. This is a guy who truly came out of nowhere in this game and lit Syracuse up. So I think that was unexpected, certainly from Jordan McDonald, but I think what was expected was that this was a game that the defensive line was going to have its hands full. We expected more out of Thomas Castellanos. Obviously, he got hurt at some point in this game and didn't have the strongest game when he was playing, but I think there's so much in this game that Syracuse struggled to do defensively. They got outplayed in the trenches. We'll see if it can improve at any point this season. They need it certainly to improve next week before they play Cal. John.
All right, Peter, thanks for all that. Great nugget there, McDonald. That's why you're the best in the biz. Thank you for the report there from Chestnut Hill. But when we return here on Orange Press Pass, we're talking more Jordan McDonald, and we're talking McCord, and we're talking Gadsden. What happened here? We're talking more about this game and what went wrong on Orange Press Pass. Welcome back to OPP here. Syracuse losers today at BC 37-31. Austin Barach, Sam Corcoran, John Boccio. Fellas, let's get more into the depths of this game and what it means from this loss in this standpoint. Let's first talk Kyle McCord, right? John, you mentioned earlier, career high passing yards. Every game it feels like at least 300 yards, if not 350. He surpassed the 3,000 milestone today. He's chasing Ryan Nassib's record from 2012 of 3,700 passing yards. But there's been some slow starts with him, and today he did not give the Orange a good place to start.
Absolutely, Austin. A lot of missed passes, the 392 yards, impressive to say the least, John. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure you're completing the passes. I challenge Kyle McCord to make sure you get that done. He can do so much better. We haven't seen the best of Kyle McCord yet in my eyes. There's a lot more. The ceiling is very high for him. This is an NFL talent right here. I just want to see him prove a little bit more. But today, I mean, on paper it looks great. Not really the best day in my opinion.
Everybody's going to point to that Pitt game in terms of bad starts for Kyle McCord. I truly don't think that this was a bad game at all from Kyle McCord. Look, obviously, stats are going to say that he had his best game of the year. Simply was not that. And you see it here. First quarter, McCord just hasn't been up to standard. Ever since that Georgia Tech game, he just simply hasn't looked the same. UNLV, great. Holy Cross, great. But after that, it's when it starts to kind of go to shambles in a sense.
It's been those the Ohio game, the Stanford game, it was like, wait, what's going on? And then as the season has unfolded here, these last three, it's been shaky. But another thing that was shaky was the trench play, like Peter talked about, Syracuse allowing so many rushing yards, 313 to the duo of Kai Robichaux and Jordan McDonald. I mean, Sam, an embarrassment is an understatement. And as Peter said, the Orange were a little bit outmanned. BC was hyping up. They were ready. They're physical. Syracuse not playing with their starters, but still 300 yards is unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable, Austin. And first of all, credit to Robichaux and McDonald for the performance today. That's something unheard of, especially coming from two backup running backs, John. But at the end of the day, how did SU not see this coming? Castellanos goes out. That's the backup quarterback now coming into
Right.
the game to replace Castellanos. So you expect them to run. And I was a little confused with Marlo Wax at postgame. You shouldn't expect to run all the time. But today, you really should. They're not going to throw the ball as much, and you're already getting torched in the run game. What's Boston College going to do? They're going to run the ball down your throat. That's the best thing you can do when you're struggling at something like that.
The box score won't tell you this, but this was Jordan McDonald's second game of the season, and both him and Kai Robichaux rushed for a career high.
He looked like Christian McCaffrey out there.
Jordan McDonald had over 100 more rushing yards than anything he's had in past seasons. That's absolute insanity. He was stomping all over SU this game, and what I found to be most amazing was that with his inexperience, he was supposed to be the boy amongst men, whereas in this game, he was the man amongst boys.
When you see two different guys have their career highs against you, that's cause for panic, I would say. And you talked about Wax's comment after the game, Sam. There's a 4th and 1 late in the game where Syracuse selled out for the run and they threw it for a wide open touchdown over the top. It's almost like the Eagles had a perfect game plan, even with their backup quarterback in, which, again, another real shame against this Elijah Robinson defense that we thought was so promising early on, and now that the depth has been tested, it's not as good as we once thought it might have been. Another guy that we think is probably pretty good, John, you were saying earlier, could be a day 2 draft pick, Rondé Gadsden. So many times this season, it's like, where is he? Because we know the talent. We know his breakout in 2022, the Liz Frank injury in 2023 last year. Today, it was more of the same. Where was he? He ended up finishing well, 100 yards and a touchdown. But, Sam, the conversation with him is pretty complicated.
It's definitely complicated. I mean, I just don't understand what the coaches don't see in Rondé Gadsden that we do. You have, like you said, John, a day 2 talent, a big receiver, a big target who can haul in passes, made one of the catches of the season in college football today for his touchdown, and he's just not getting the usage. Instead, they're going to other guys like Justice Ross Simmons. Don't get me wrong, those guys are good, but Rondé Gadsden is one of the best targets you're going to have at Syracuse for a long time in my eyes. You need to make sure you're using him. Get him the targets. Kyle McCord said this offseason he loves working with Gadsden. Why not use that connection more?
Well, speaking of this offseason, the whole thing with Rondé Gadsden was he told Coach Fran Brown, hey, if you don't get me a quarterback, I'm leaving. Well, they got him a quarterback, but they refused to throw him the ball. His role is completely blurred in this offense. No one really knows where he stands. You can't have a 2-catch game if you are the Syracuse coaches looking at a Rondé Gadsden saying, okay, you're only going to target him 5 times and he's only going to actually catch the ball on 2 of those. Gadsden's role is just, it's completely blurred within this offense, and it amazes me how you can have this good of a talent and this little receptions with him. He's got less receptions than LaQuint Allen right now.
In a pass-first offense, mind you.
60 passes McCord has thrown before, and Rondé Gadsden has had 3 catches in that game. It amazes me how he is just lost in space.
Startling stuff. LaQuinn is a guy who now has a reception in 21 straight games, around 100 for his career. But the player of the game is his counterpart, Kai Robichaux out of Boston College. I mean, the running back, we've detailed his performance a lot today. Impressive stuff. You're talking about a guy with 28 carries, nearly 200 yards on the ground, 2 tutties. And there was time in this game, you saw the highlight there, where it seemed like Syracuse's defense wanted no part of him, breaking tackles left and right, showing off his athleticism, racing down the field. His impact on the game was tangible. His presence was felt. Kai Robichaux, the player of the game, instrumental in that 3-play, 75-yard touchdown to tie up the game at 21 apiece in the third quarter. From there, BC took it and ran away with it. They flew away with it, almost, you could say, as an Eagle. All right, enough about this game specifically. When we come back here on OPP, we're talking big picture. Where do the Orange go from here? Is all hope lost? Stick with us here. OPP.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go?
Excellent. Soccer is fun. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. Where
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Syracuse falling to Boston College today in mass, 37-31 to drop to 3-3 in ACC play. Austin Barach, Sam Corcoran, John Boccio here. We're here at the Wall, fellas. We're breaking down what's going on with this Orange team. We talked about how bad this game specifically was, but let's open it up. Let's get big picture here. Let's talk about the state of the defense, right? The first 7 games was pretty solid, but these last 2, Virginia Tech against a backup quarterback, pretty bad. And then today against Castellanos, and then also a backup quarterback. There's a lot more questions to be answered right now, Sam, when it comes to this Elijah Robinson defense.
Totally. There's just, like Fran Brown said, like we've touched on so many times today, there's just no grit in this defense right now. And one common theme, John, that I've seen season to season that's still happening with some of the personnel on this team who have played it prior to this year at Syracuse, there's no energy in the tank. This is why this team struggles in November a lot. There's no passion. They're missing tackles, blown coverage, no commitment to anything going on. It's been an issue throughout the season and throughout prior seasons, like I said. They just need a refuel at some point, but there's not much time to do it at this point.
Yeah, Sam, this team, as you said, has lost all of its energy. And I think something that we're not hammering home enough about this team is the discipline on defense. 10 plays, 91 yards of penalties in this game for the defense. I mean, that just cannot happen. When this team runs out of energy, it starts committing bad penalties, not to mention the onside kick recovery, which, yes, a special teams play, but still defensive players involved. Look, you can't commit that penalty. It was Fadil Diggs on it, right? That kind of stuff just can't be happening. So this team, 1, needs to have some more energy and I guess condition better, whatever it may be. But 2, it needs some more discipline heading forward.
How do you create energy? Because you look at the stats here, they're allowing way more attempts, they're allowing way more yards on the ground. It almost feels like other teams are sensing that lack of energy. Fran Brown earlier this season was like, we need to start hitting more. Our guys aren't hitting more. What's going on? How can they generate energy? In that Pitt game, all those interceptions that McCourt threw seemed to hurt the defense's energy. Because the defense, if you guys recall, came to play that day. Is it almost like when the offense does bad, the defense also does bad, John?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, you're totally right. Whereas this offense generates the energy for the defense. When the offense is firing, the defense is firing, and obviously that was not the case today. 37 points allowed when BC didn't have a pass game to go to. I mean, you can't be seeing a backup quarterback in front of you, not committing run every single time, and stopping the run consistently. When the offense isn't helping you out much in the first half and you let up 14 points, that's always going to put you on the backside. And then when you give yourself an advantage, or not necessarily give yourself a Thomas Castellanos injury, but you're ultimately setting yourself up for success with a lot of options on defense there. And by all those options, it should be blitz, 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 blitz. And that's not what they did.
Well, let's talk more about the first half of that conversation, the offense, right? The offense ended up producing 31 points today, but how that came about was interesting. It seems like the offense is the same conversation most games. 60 pass attempts, and the running game is a little lackluster. Today, Sam, they try to run the ball more with Allen, but ultimately, where do you land with the identity of this offense?
It's just a very blurry identity, blurry vision overall. You know what this team wants to do? It's a pass-first team. They don't run the ball that much. But we talked about Oronde Gadsden earlier. That's their top target, and they're not really using him, John. Not to mention their running back, LaQuint Allen, is an NFL talent. Fran Brown admitted that he's an NFL talent, and he's not really getting the reps he should be getting at running back in my eyes. I think they just need to figure out what's best for them and go forward with find their better targets. Oronde Gadsden and LaQuint Allen are the best players on this offense, skill position-wise. Why not use them a little bit more? I feel like I've hit that nail on the head so many times today, but that's really the identity of this offense. They need to do that a little bit more.
Well, Sam, almost to play devil's advocate here, I feel today was a great example of balance within this offensive identity because LaQuint Allen still had 16 carries, but he was not being efficient with the football. 50 rushing yards, and the only reason he had 2 touchdowns in this one was because he was given the ball 5 yards out, right? So I think you gave LaQuint Allen enough chances to prove himself here, and it didn't really prove anything outside of maybe we should pass the ball a little bit more because Oronde Gadsden was great. Jackson Meeks was great. Both of those two over 100 yards. Kyle McCord, a career high in passing yards. I think today was a good example of where you need to be in terms of balance, and it may look one-sided, but it didn't feel it.
It's interesting. The Virginia Tech definitely looks the most balanced. When you look at those stats there, it obviously resulted in an overtime win. But again, we talked defense, we talked offense. Where do we stand with this team overall? Because you're now at 6-3. basketball season is in full swing. You've already clinched a bowl game, but there doesn't feel to be a whole lot of juice with the bowl game. That's probably going to be on December 28th or December 31st. Is all hope lost, Sam? I don't want to sound dramatic, but the way that they lost today's game, despite the offense moving the ball, the 2 turnovers, the fumbles, where does this team go? Do you have optimism with this team?
I actually do have optimism with this team. Just look at the next 2 games. You have Cal. It's going to be a tough game, but that's a winnable game. Cal's lost to Florida State this year. They usually have 1 or 2 bad losses a season, so Syracuse coming in, you never know with that. Then they play UConn at home, back in the Dome. That Dome advantage is something unmatched in the NCAA, John. I think that's one that Syracuse can win. And then Miami, it's a challenge, but today they proved they're beatable. I mean, they lost to Georgia Tech on the road. Miami coming to the Dome on the road with that Dome advantage, like I mentioned. I wouldn't say all hope's lost. I think there's still a little bit in the season left. They can maybe push to 9-3. 8-4 seems a little more reasonable at this point. They just got to make sure they refuel and they're ready for that.
I ultimately think 8-4 is probably where they end up this season. But Austin, you asked, where does this team sit, or where do we sit with this team? If Syracuse is on one side of the dinner table, I'm all the way on the other side, because all hope in this season is lost. Look, is it a, quote, successful year 1 with Fran Brown thus far? I'd say so, because ultimately...
I think we still need to see how these final 3 games play out.
Absolutely. California is going to be a tough game. UConn should be a win in theory. And depending on the Miami game is where it gets a little bit questionable. But I think ultimately, Kyle McCord has looked great. The offense has looked really good. And yes, that's a success. But when it comes to the outlook of this season, I see Syracuse going 1-2. And then when you look at after this season, well, boy, that gets rough, because no more Kyle McCord, no more Syracuse offense.
All right, a lot of doom and gloom potentially for the future. Let's stick it right here, right now. When we come back, we're talking about the other games across the country. Sam alluded to it. There's a new first-place team in the ACC, and there's a big one in the SEC right now in Oxford, Mississippi. All that more. OPP ends in just a little bit.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Orange Press Pass wrapping up here. Austin Barach, Sam Corcoran, John Boccio. Guys, let's check out some scores from across the country. Why not? Syracuse, we know, lost today 37-31. But how about some other scores, right? Miami played at Georgia Tech, 2 teams that are on Syracuse's schedule, and lost. You see that right there. The Yellow Jackets were just simply the better team today, Sam.
Absolutely. Also look at that Cal game. That's Syracuse's next opponent. Impressive win at Wake Forest on the road. Cal getting back on track, getting a little hotter. Something to watch out for, John.
Yeah, absolutely. The ACC is going to be a fun race towards the end, because a lot of these teams are kind of sitting in the middle of the conference, just medaling at a about 500 record.
All right, guys, we've discussed today's football slate a whole lot, so let's talk about the next OPP, which is a basketball show Tuesday against Colgate. The Raiders have posed issues for the Orange as of late, Sam.
Definitely in a must-win game for Syracuse, especially after a little bit of a disappointing outing against Lemoyne last week. Kind of a good get-right game to get back on track, John.
I'm going to keep it short and simple. Colgate's going to win this game because they're going to shoot the lights out, right? Colgate has proven time and time again that they can shoot at all costs, and that's what they did last year. And Syracuse was lucky to sneak out of that one with a win, a huge comeback in that game. Syracuse just has to lock down the 3-ball and hit their shots.
All right, guys. Basketball season in full swing. Syracuse 86-82 over Lemoyne last week. Syracuse football today. Couldn't get it done in Chestnut Hill. The Oranges have stopped on the downhill. But this was a whole lot of fun. For John Boccio, Sam Corcoran, and all the producers, I'm Austin Barach saying thanks so much for watching. More sports later on.